All right, we are live for another sales Shiro. We can be Shiros if just for one day. I know I'm flogging that one to death, but I'm still going to say it. My name is John Golden from Sales Pop Online Sales Magazine and Pipeliner CRM, joining you as usual from a sunny San Diego. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Kerry Curran, who is in Boston. How you doing?
Hi, John. I'm good, good. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and Kelly is a seasoned professional with extensive experience in driving revenue and performance, particularly in B2B sectors like agencies, services, SaaS companies, and the founder of Revenue Based Marketing Advisors and the host of Revenue Booster Marketing podcast. So, welcome. And what we're going to talk about today is about boosting revenue and performance. Let's start straight into it, Kerry, right? I mean, we're midway through the year, and anybody who's on a
Mhm.
calendar fiscal year, right? Things may be going well for you, or you may be starting to hit that uh,
Yeah.
panic button where your pipeline isn't looking that strong. You're not on target for you're not meeting your targets yet. So, what are some of the when somebody's in a situation like that? What are some of the first things they should do to analyze their situation?
Yeah, that's a good question, John. And I've been in this exact scenario before where it was June and they realized that the forecast was not going to be aligned. And we looked at a couple of things. One was first the sales cycle. How could we tighten up the sales cycle and shorten that time from the first conversation to contract? So, in my situation, we had an average of 120-day sales cycle. We looked at each step of the process and were able to cut it down to 35 to 45 days. And
Mm,
some of the tactics and strategies were basic best practices of setting the next meeting before you hang up the call, sending questions in advance of the discovery call. So, in asking if they needed an NDA to have the conversation so that the first call could be more productive. Everything to then speeding up the process of the custom proposal development and tracking and follow up. So, looking at how can we really shorten that sales cycle to bring the contracts in a lot more quickly.
mhm. And then how important is it to get then alignment across the organization, to make sure like marketing, support, onboarding, all of those elements are all working together to, optimize and accelerate the process?
Yeah, that's a good question too, because then the customer success, the account management team had to be ready for to onboard those clients more quickly, and we had to manage the staffing allocation and just the onboarding plan a little bit differently to make sure that as we're bringing in contracts faster, we could get them set up for success more
Mhm,
quickly as well. So
mhm.
definitely took a lot of alignment there.
Yeah. And how is AI playing a role now? Because that's a big question everybody has, because, there was obviously everybody got super excited and we're running an AI everywhere. And then people
Mhm.
realizing, well, you have to kind of use it strategically. It can't be just something that you kind of outsource everything to.
Yes, no, definitely, definitely. I mean, the you're not using AI to create something from scratch, but what you can use it for is that research and getting more clarity into what your story should be, what you need to be telling the audience. So, from a sales process perspective, using it for more effective and efficient research into the company or the person that you'll be pitching to or speaking with, using it to get a better understanding of their pain points, anything out about their company that's in the space already. Any more data that you can pull in to make a more prescriptive and customized conversation. The other way to use it is to make sure that, or to a faster way to analyze data around who your best customers are, which types of companies, or what are the attributes of your ideal customer profile of that customer that is going to drive the greatest lifetime value in year over year revenue growth, and using AI to analyze all of those data points to help you identify your best ideal customer profile to align then all of your marketing and resources towards bringing more of those customers that
Mhm.
can be more successful with you.
Yeah, because it's I agree, and it's very interesting when you think about it. Right, a lot of organizations, the ICP is not as well defined as you would think it would
Yes.
be,
Mhm.
or it is well defined, but it's out of date, and it
Mhm.
hasn't been renewed. So,
Mhm.
talk to me a little bit about how important that is to constantly revisit your ICP, make sure you're on target, make sure their habits haven't changed, make sure they haven't migrated and that your ICP is actually a slightly different than it used to be.
Yes, that's a really good question, John. And I work with a lot of agencies. I help them go from just referral-based growth to actual go-to-market
Mhm.
infrastructure. And more often than not, they do not have an identified ICP. It's a very we'll sell to anyone, we'll sell
Yeah.
to everyone, anyone who will pay us is a customer. So it's critically important to first narrow that down to your point of who are we best aligned with? Who should we be selling to? Who can be most successful with our services and our resources as well? You bring in a bad customer, it burns out resources and doesn't allow you to grow the good customers from the so first it's making establishing that I have a process where I survey I have my clients fill out surveys about with a questionnaire about their best customers and different attributes, and then a separate questionnaire about their worst customers and the attributes, and then I take that, I use AI to analyze all of the data to help narrow down the focus of who's the most successful customer for you
Mhm.
to align your marketing and messaging and go to market strategy with. So that first step is critically important. And as far as revisiting that is also important to, I think a quarterly basis is usually what my peers and what I've heard is the best, or what I've done as well. A quarterly basis to revisit
Mhm.
all of the sales data, all of the renewal data, you get input from your customer success team on resource usage, who are the squeaky wheels or who's, utilization of time, but also if you're a platform or technology, who's utilizing your platform the most, so actually using what they subscribed to, so pulling in different data points to make sure, to your point, that who the company that you're marketing to, your ICP, is actually the one that's going to help you drive sustainable revenue growth year over year.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Most research and most experts will tell you like the more granular you get, the better. And as you said, that's scary for people
Yeah.
sometimes because it's like, oh, I'm shrinking my addressable market here. You're
Yeah.
going, no, you're not. You're actually focusing in on your real market, and that's so
Mhm.
important. And then the other thing you mentioned about process, right? I think that's another thing is your sales process.
Yeah.
It's another thing that most companies have a sales process, but again, sometimes you'll find, yeah, we put a sales process together like three
Mhm.
years ago, and you're going 3 years ago, right? And
Yeah.
they haven't revisited it. And again, that is so critically important. Talk a little bit about why process and a good sales process is so important to say, because there's some people still out there who still think that, sales is an art form.
Right. Well, it is. There's
It
still
is.
an
It is
art
to a
form.
degree. Yeah.
But right, so there's, that's an interesting question because I was on a call recently where the hosts were suggesting that the head of sales sits in on their team sales and process every once in a while, just kind of shadowing like a
Mm.
backseat driver to get an idea of if they're utilizing the tools, the technology that the company has invested in. How are they using the if it's the intent signal partner, is it how are they connecting the data into the
Mhm.
CRM? How are they, following up, recording, all of that after each call? And and they were saying it's surprising more often than not, you'll see that the sales leads are not necessarily following all of those best practices. And so to your
Mhm.
point of those, first of all, you make those investments to drive more effectiveness and efficiency. So if they're not using them and not following the process, you need to understand why. And if at the end of the day, is it the salesperson's lack of trying, learning,
Mhm.
getting into that process, or is it actually not the right technology? So
Mhm.
it's figuring that out as well. But the processes and best practices are there because they work.
Yeah.
So, like I mentioned early on, of getting into the habit of sending questions in advance, setting that next call at the end of your call. Like, those aren't hard things to do, and they make all the difference,
Mhm.
as your in the effectiveness and the success of your process. So, making sure that the teams have guidelines and frameworks that they can follow, so that they don't, log into their computer in the morning and say, where do I start? They know
Mhm.
what they need to do, and they can move forward effectively.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think following on from the ICP, the ideal customer profile. Just in
Mhm.
case we're using acronyms and not
Yeah.
explaining them, I
Yes. Yeah.
apologize.
Thank you.
Uh, uh, they so when they found the sales so one of the things that I've always found that is very challenging, to people and even to organizations, and I've even experienced this with the parent company, the past, is when you are very rigorous about your
Mhm.
pipeline,
Yep.
especially early stage, right? You're
Mhm.
very rigorous about properly qualifying anything that gets into your pipeline.
Mhm.
It can result in a much smaller pipeline, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that makes people really nervous, because
Yes.
people have grown up on this thing. I need 5x, I need 8x, I need whatever x it is. And when you get down to, so part of a sales leader's job is to really work, and help the
Mhm.
salespeople to properly qualify, because otherwise you get a bloated
Yep.
pipeline. I used to call it the feel good funnel. When
Yeah.
you have a load of stuff in early stages to make you feel
Mhm.
good, and you say,
Mhm.
"Oh, things are bad right now, Kerry, but you just wait for a couple of months' time. It's going to be great." And then in a couple of months' time, it's like, in a couple of months more.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. No, I agree, and and it is it's a very true scenario, right? You're getting more focused, again, going back to
Mhm.
not wasting your time on those prospects that are not going to be a good
Mhm.
fit for your ultimate revenue growth. Um, and it is scary. So I speaking with a CEO of an agency recently, and they had switched to a more rigorous ICP
Mhm.
targeted strategy. And exactly how you described it, they got very nervous because that number got smaller. And so they panicked and opened it up again,
Mm.
and it had the opposite effect.
Yeah.
So they quickly went back to their very targeted ICP. And in this scenario, this agency, their Perform CB, they have so hyper targeted and focused on their most successful ICP, and they have teams researching prior to the sales calls. They base it all, as I had mentioned, on who can they be most successful partnering with. What types of companies is most successful as their client, and making sure that anyone that they go after and on board has the potential to be a very profitable year after year after year growth partner and customer. So by narrowing that focus and hyper targeting, they had their net growth just within a year was pretty substantial, because they weren't wasting time
Mhm.
on those that weren't going to be a good fit.
Yeah, and talk to me a little bit about the role of sales leaders, because this is another area where, especially as I said, especially when things are maybe not looking as fantastic as possible,
Mhm.
and you really need to boost things. The natural instinct of a lot of sales leaders, especially if they were salespeople themselves, is
Yep.
to focus on the late stages of the pipeline and sort of say, "Hey, Kerry, I'm going to come in and help you, close this." And
Yeah.
we're going to, and in reality, what ends up is I kind of elbow you to the side and I take over and all
Mhm.
of that, because it makes me feel good. I think I'm doing the best job, but the reality is that's not what I should be doing, and it's not where I should be focused.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think it's the leadership and the coaching that's going to make the difference there. Um, I've been in that scenario where you want to be kind of the muscle, or the expert in the room, and But to your point, if you're not allowing your salesperson to strengthen their own skills and be that person, it's going to backfire. To your point,
Mhm.
I think another, as far as where the head of sales or the chief revenue officer should be focusing, there's it's aligning the data of the pipeline data, the close rate
Mhm.
data, the projections, and making sure that the teams have the resources to hit those projections based on the historical data. So, one of the things that I look at now is the sales cycle is critical. How many months does it typically take to close a deal that comes in this quarter? And looking that quarter after quarter so that we know if we need to hit a certain number of deals or revenue by Q4, what do we need in the pipeline today? I think the most important thing there is having the data, making sure that's accurate and updated, and then having a clear line of communication with marketing, with the go-to-market leaders, with the CEO on we need to make these investments here now based on historical data if we want to hit those goals, by Q4.
Mhm.
And, one conversation I was having recently is if you have a 6 to 9 month sales cycle, that pipeline right now is for first half of 2026. And so you need to be realistic about that. Like, yes, depending again on your sales cycle, what can you dial up now? Where can you kind of pour gasoline to get things going? But if you haven't done the work to get your target audience primed to
Mhm.
be aware of you, know what features, capabilities you offer, how you're different to your competition before the salesperson even speaks to them, you're going to have a hard time getting those deals in the door and closed by the end of this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And then obviously there's your current customers, right?
Yes.
And that's an area where you obviously need to maximize and hopefully
Mhm.
maybe increase wallet share. What role? Talk to me a little bit about account-based marketing and how effective that can be, and how it can be done effectively.
Yeah, so for existing customers, I'm glad you brought this up because to me it's such a critical part of the go-to-market strategy, and especially for um, looking at your revenue projections, right? It's much easier to keep a customer than it is to
Hmm.
win a customer from a cost perspective and a resource perspective. So making sure that your existing customers are happy, they want to sign on for another year, making sure they're aware of your other capabilities and offerings, and from an upsell perspective. I've worked with account management teams where I was told, oh, they're not comfortable selling. They don't want to share, to feel like they're pushing things on their customers. But it's important to think about from the perspective of the customer success manager, the account lead. You are the consultant helping your client be as successful as
Hmm.
they can be at their job. And part of that is making sure they're aware of everything that they should be aware of that they could add to their program. And so it's not here, I'm pushing other products on you and I want to nickel and dime you. It's making sure that they know that are just aware of all the things that you could be doing to help them. And that's something that I've seen where a client leaves and they're like, well, we wanted somebody that also offers social media. And they're
Yeah.
like, well, wait, we do that
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
We're like,
yeah, yeah.
really? You never told us. So making sure that they're aware of that from the retention perspective as well. One of the things I do is the net promoter score research. So
Hmm.
I reach out to my clients, customers, and ask them, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend them to somebody else? And then I pull out a lot of other insights from those conversations. One, to see if there's a red flag that they might be unlikely to renew and allow the team to get on top of that. Another thing that I've found is a lot of companies are afraid to get bad feedback or bad
Right.
news, so they just don't ask.
Hmm.
But you need that information. the other thing, going back to the ICP and marketing, is I get those insights and those testimonials and those quotes and those why do you like to work with this company? What are the outcomes they're driving for you? Why did you choose them over their competition? How are they different, or what do you like the most about them? In one situation, I collected all of this data for my clients and was able to build that into a new brand strategy based on the attributes that their customers liked the most about them, their differentiation, and using that for them to promote themselves in market. So, that's another bonus to the Net Promoter Score research, but you always want to have your finger on the pulse of how your customers feel about you, because you don't want to find out when you go to send them the contract for next year that they're not renewing. By then it's way too late.
Yeah, the old no news is good news is not a good strategy
No.
because no news can turn into bad news very quickly. Exactly. What the thing that you mentioned there is something that I mean I came across myself at one stage where I took over this organization and I went to visit the customers, right, the top customers, and the company was well known and was doing well, whatever. But the customers told me, "We love what you do, but we'd love to know what other things you do because you
Yeah,
never tell us."
yeah, yeah,
And you actually, you make it kind of hard to do business with you. With two great things for any organization, right? To make it you're hard to do business with, and you don't tell them about the other stuff that they
hmm,
want to know about. And it is a fascinating thing that sometimes they're like so reluctant to tell people or to sort of suggest. I mean, we take the approach of we want to interact with our customers as much as possible. So if somebody has an issue and comes to us, a support issue, we don't look at it as a close a ticket. We look
right.
at it as an opportunity, obviously, to help them with that issue, but also
Mhm.
to advise them and to tell them about other things. And like when I'm a customer, I want to know from my vendor or whatever. I want to know what you're doing with other people. Is there other things I could be
Yeah,
doing? Is there things I'm missing? And so that seems out of sync a little bit. Like
yeah,
what a salesperson thinks, like, oh, I better back off, or the account based marketing folks, I better back off a little.
yeah,
But
yeah.
in fact, the customer wants that.
Yes, yeah, they do. And other times, some companies have a customer conference or
Hmm.
just dinner. And I've been in scenarios where the leadership was like, oh, we don't want our customers talking to each other. And like if your immediate instinct is that, oh no, they're going to share commiseration and complaints, then the problem is much deeper
Yeah,
than that. So it's,
yeah.
yeah, to your point, like, but if they can say, oh, they did this for me and it was awesome. Oh, really? I want to try that too. Like there's more to it there.
Yeah. No, if you're organizing a customer dinner and you're trying to keep customers apart at that dinner, yeah, you've probably got some significant issues there, and
Yeah,
you might have a few empty seats at your dinner too.
exactly.
um, and just what hyper personalization is becoming this big thing about
Mhm,
everything
mhm.
needs to be heavily personalized, and obviously technology and AI and stuff is helping with that.
Yep,
How important do you think personalization is?
yep. I think it's definitely one of the most important aspects of your messaging and your strategy. There's so much competition out there. Any MarTech or SaaS platform has at least two or three competitors, right? So the more
Hmm.
you can customize and personalize your message to your target audience, to your ICP, and demonstrate that you are the best partner, you know them better than anyone else, and you're the best partner to solve their problems or get them to their growth goals. And so whether it's like hyper alignment with ICP in your broader messaging, or using some of the AI powered email platforms or CRM or add-ons to send those messages out, but you want to make sure that if you're talking to somebody in the retail industry, that you're talking about how your product platform solves provides
Hmm.
solutions for retail and examples of other retails, if it's CPG, if it's B2B, if it's a startup versus a scale up versus enterprise. Each of these companies have different business challenges, and the closer you can get to those to personalize your message to help yourself stand out, the better. One great example, one of my uh, peers in the industry, she would take sales calls and write down anytime she knew a new pain point, heard a new pain point or outcome that the audience need, the
Mhm.
prospect needed, and immediately would put in a plan to put content on the website that demonstrated that they can solve that. So
Mhm.
again, as buyers are doing more and more research, the more you can position you as the best solution for them, specific to their needs, their industry, their size, their vertical, et cetera, the more likely they are going to feel like you're the best fit for them.
Yeah, and that's really important, obviously, today for people to understand. Like, there's two things. There's the obviously there's the Google algorithms, and they promote
Mhm.
good quality content. So if you're putting up stuff like that
Yes.
where you're hitting pain points and you're going like deep in it, that's great. Same with
Mhm.
AI. If you want to show up in AI searches, you need to
Yeah.
have good quality content. So I guess if there's a final question, coming back to that sales and marketing alignment, I mean,
Yeah.
it's so critical because of what we're just talking about,
Mhm.
because you need to have the content, you need to have the marketing that's going to attract the people, that's going to show up in the search engines and in the AI searches, etc. Has to be very heavily aligned.
Yes. Mhm. It does, and it's the communication loops, it's the, sharing of content, it's the learnings, just that example again from the sales calls, and
Mhm.
building that back into your marketing. It's the quality of the leads coming in, if
Mhm.
you're seeing the quality decrease or the volume decrease, even when it's hyper targeted, then you need to look at what are you doing to kind of fill that funnel. The investment in those marketing, brand awareness, engagement strategies is what's going to make the sales team more successful. So making sure that there's understanding of that shared role
Mhm.
in driving those end company revenue
Yeah,
goals.
and my advice would always be that your marketing people should be taking part in sales meetings, or your marketing
Yes.
lead should be on
Mhm.
on at least some of them, the monthly sales calls or whatever.
Mhm.
It should never be this thing where they're like so separate.
Right, right. And I took over a sales and marketing team, and sales, they didn't talk to each other.
Mhm.
The head of sales was complaining about the leads the head of marketing was sending, and the head of marketing was, didn't they? And the first thing I did was, integrate the teams, because if there's not alignment, it's just a huge waste of swirl and time, and it doesn't make any sense. So yes, the alignment is the most fundamental, strategy, and that does need to come from the top down. It
Yeah.
needs to be company wide too.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I had an experience some years back at a very well known global company, when myself and actually Neil Rackham, the author of Spin Selling,
Yeah.
we went and did a session with the CEO and the marketing team on one side, and the sales leadership on one side, marketing leadership on the other side. And our first hour was almost like refereeing a fight.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was
It's like we're
amazing
all
to
on the
think
same
you
team.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, you're going, we're not even on your team, we're external, and we were just sitting there going, whoa, there's some issues here.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
it is.
think that ties to one of the most important factors, is that the company needs to have that same North Star, and you may
Mhm.
need to make sure all the teams, including customer success, are paddling towards that same North Star, and that needs to be top down.
Yeah, and actually, at the end of the day, the solution was very simple. It was that they just had a misunderstanding of each other's roles and what each other should be
Right.
doing and how they could better. And once you got them working together, it was fine. I mean, it's not rocket science, but we're still talking about it in 2025, sales and
Yeah.
marketing alignment.
Yeah. It should be one team, one growth team, one revenue growth team for sure.
So, before we finish, what's your last piece of advice for people?
Yeah, I mean, I think we covered a lot, but one thing we didn't cover was the importance of empathy and listening in
Mm,
that process,
yeah.
right? So whether you are the salesperson during a sales call, really listening for that outcome or pain point that the target audience, your prospect, is sharing, and then making sure you're bringing that back into your messaging. It's your humans selling to humans.
Mhm.
Don't forget that. Keep that aspect of, we are partners. We are going to work together to get you to your goal, and again, making sure that you're really focusing on that empathy and listening to get there.
Yeah, and a lot of selling is done virtually now, so you need
Yes.
to be present. So those,
Yes.
so
Yep.
stop looking at the little pop-up, stop looking at the other stuff, like, because if you're doing that, you're not active listening.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. That's a great point.
Well, listen, thanks so much, Kerry. Before we go, please do remind people what you do.
Sure, thanks. So I am a go-to-market executive advisor, and I invite you to follow my podcast, Revenue Boost Marketing Podcast. We just hit over 1 million downloads.
Wow.
I'll also add that after a year plus of running a consultancy, I am on the market to be for a full-time role because I miss being part of a team. So if you're hiring for an executive in any go-to-market function, please keep me in mind. But thank you, John. It's been great to be here, and I really appreciate the time and having me on today.
Yeah, fantastic. Listen, thank you for watching and listening. Thank you for, please do share this. We're on multiple platforms, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, etc., Facebook. So please do share this. There's a lot of great wisdom shared by Kerry. So thanks again, Kerry. Thank you for watching and listening. And we'll see you all for another Sales Heroes episode very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thanks, everyone, for joining.